Okay, so today we're going to talk about something called the Complete Recruiter Marketing System, which obviously is sort of a big name, has sort of a bold promise implied. But I think by the end of this sort of presentation, you'll understand, how comprehensive it really can be. So before we do that, let me give you just a brief introduction to Talent Hero and who I am. So my name is Zach, and I am the founder of Talent Hero. I've been working in the digital marketing space for quite a while now, and founded Talent Hero about 5 years ago to work exclusively with recruiting and staffing agencies. And so we've now worked with many, many different recruiting agencies of all sizes, with the goal being to ultimately figure out how do you grow your business using online channels. So now, in terms of what you're going to learn today, we have kind of a simple equation, and the idea here is that you're going to have certain lead channels, and those you may want to obviously consider adding some additional ones, but those are going to be the primary way that people find out about your business. And for most recruiters, I think that they often have sort of what's been quite established for quite some time, but where they're lacking is the automation. So we're really going to talk about how do you take what you're doing today and really figure out how to automate it so that you can sort of have a new business explosion. And essentially what that means is, we're going to take your current lead sources and, increase their productivity significantly by making sure you're not sort of doing all of the follow-up work that typically takes you away from doing your own job. So before we kind of dive into how that works, I think we need to sort of take a step back and talk about a marketing system in general, just sort of the big picture concept. So basically, any marketing system is essentially allowing you to move your leads through a funnel. Some of you have probably heard of the concept of a funnel before, but if not, it's pretty straightforward. We'll just sort of give you an example now to explain how it works. So the first step is awareness. Obviously, in order for somebody to potentially be a client of yours, they must know that you exist. So in this, say, hypothetical example, they're going to discover, say, your agency on LinkedIn. And at this point, they may not immediately sort of have any need for your services, but let's say that a job opens up internally and now they do have a need for a recruiter, so they're now interested. From here, you might be sort of under consideration for them as a potential option, so they visit your site to conduct research on your business. And now they like what they have to see, so there's now some sort of intent on their hand on their part to actually use you, so they book a call to learn about your service. Obviously, on that call, they're going to speak to you about your service offering, essentially evaluating you. And then, best case scenario, they sort of move to the purchasing stage, which in this case means hiring your agency to fill the open job. So you can see this is obviously a very idealized situation, but it's certainly something that could happen. Now, true funnels, we have leads rarely transition from awareness to intent all the way on their own, right? It's very hard. In that example I gave, you didn't really do anything besides sort of make sure your website existed before the intent phase. But in reality, you have to sort of be prodded along and moved through that funnel in order for them to get to that point where they're ready to buy. So you kind of need to have a plan for these more common scenarios, not that sort of idealized one I showed you. So as an example, let's say somebody does a Google search, finds your business. They visit your site and they just leave. I mean, this happens all the time. Maybe they have a meeting scheduled with their team. They sort of step away from their computer, or they take the call and they just sort of forget about you. Or, you send them a cold email, they read the email and they just ignore it because they already have a recruiter filling the open position. And you're just like, it's just not the right timing for them to consider somebody else. Or maybe you create some sort of digital ad. They visit your landing page after clicking on the ad, and then they leave the landing page. Maybe, their phone rings or someone knocks on their door. But, the point is that there's many, many reasons why people who have some level of interest are just not going to instantly become your customers. And I think that for most recruiters, they don't really have a plan for what to do in these situations. And what that means is a lot of potential leads kind of just drop off, meaning they just, they could have been your client had you sort of done the right next steps, but they just don't. So what we think is sort of the solution is a complete system. And that can significantly increase your close rate from, say, that awareness stage down to the purchase stage. So when we talk about a complete system, we mean one that takes advantage of every opportunity to transition your leads down through your marketing funnel. And that's really key, is every opportunity. From our sort of experience, we would say that the average recruiter is probably taking advantage of maybe 20% of their opportunities. Different, obviously your hot opportunities, you're probably better on, but there's a lot of cold opportunities or warmer opportunities where there are things you can do to make sure that that person doesn't just disappear off your radar. So why are most systems not complete? Well, I sort of answered that. People just allow them to sort of drop out of the funnel before they reach their desired goal, even though in an ideal state, they could have become, your client, or in some cases, a candidate that you work with. So now I think we sort of set the understanding of what exactly, a complete marketing system is going to do. Let's talk about how you're going to do it. And this is where the idea of a conditional automated sequence comes into play. So what you're looking at, of course, I'm going to walk through it, is essentially a map of somebody's journey on your website and different outcomes that may happen. And basically, in this case, we're sort of going to show you, how you make sure that nobody sort of falls off. So let's say somebody searches for your business, they arrive on your site, and they're presented with a request to book a call through some sort of form. And if they do, great, we put them in our booking sequence. You can kind of imagine how that might work. But in many cases, it's just not going to happen right off the bat. So in this case, we have a lead magnet, such as a salary guide. We're going to offer them a salary guide in exchange for their contact information. But again, we can look at the data. We can see most people come to your site are going to look around and leave. That's just the nature of how this works. So in this case, they don't download the salary guide and you don't have their contact information. For a lot of people, this person is gone, never to sort of come back into your funnel. But there are options that you can use, such as adding somebody to a retargeting sequence. Those are essentially the ads that people see after they've been to a business who's, trying to get them to come back, typically associated with e-commerce, but, definitely no reason you can't do it for your recruiting business as well. So we're going to, for this discussion though, assume the person downloads the salary guide. And we're going to, when they download that salary guide, we're essentially going to ask them a question to try and help them segment themselves. Basically tell us, is this a client lead or a candidate lead? So let's say they're, I'm looking for a job. That's kind of what they tell us. We're going to put them in maybe an email newsletter sequence, contact them once a month with some relevant information. There's other things you could do, but that's one option. But let's say somebody, they say that they're a client. And we know from experience that people who download the salary guide have a decent chance of turning into our customers if we pursue them. So even though they didn't book a call, we're going to put them in a call sequence. And now let's sort of look at what that means. So basically, every time you kind of see this green box on this little diagram, you can imagine there's some sort of next other diagram that's sort of being hidden right now, but we could drill into. So in this case, we're going to sort of drill into the add to call sequence. So, maybe in this sequence, we're going to start by connecting with them on LinkedIn, just to sort of make sure they, have some familiarity with us. And then we're going to give them a call. And of course, there are options here. Let's say they pick up the call and we find out, we go through our discovery process. They tell us, we sort of determine, are you interested in your service or did you just want the salary guide? Well, if they are, that's great. They're now probably going to be a pretty hot lead because they've come to our website, they like the salary guide. We spoke to them, they explicitly said they might be interested. So we're going to put them into some sort of other sequence. But, in many cases, they're going to be like, no, I just wanted the salary guide. And here's a great example of a place where somebody was often going to just drop off your radar. They didn't have an immediate interest. How are you going to do to make sure you stay in touch with them? Well, you can put them in like a most placeable candidate sequence, basically tag them as, sort sort of where they're at in your process, and then send them candidates when you have people who you think might fit their profile. That's obviously a way to kind of make sure that they stay engaged. But for the purpose of this example, let's say they don't answer, right? So we're going to leave a voicemail, and then we're going to add them to a follow-up call sequence. And I think what's interesting about this sequence is that you can actually do this entire sequence requires no work up until maybe here, but it can actually, if it's automated properly, it can be quite a powerful way of sort of continuing to contact somebody. So let's say they don't pick up, you put them in this new sequence, you send them an automated follow-up email that's in a template. You wait 2 days, you drop a follow-up voicemail. I'm not sure, I know some recruiters are familiar with this idea, but in case you're not, there is a way to actually send a voicemail directly to somebody's voicemail, bypassing their actual phone. So you could actually pre-record a voicemail that just says, hi there, I'm just following up on my last voicemail. If you're interested in our services, give me a call. So it's kind of generic so that you can send it to anybody without having to do any additional work. And then you might want to say, wait 3 days and give them a second call. And you're going to know when to do that because you have a task list that all of these sequences are kind of putting manual tasks into when, it can't be automated. So, if you put this all together, I know this is a little bit small, but you can kind of see that we're starting to build out this really clear plan where every single step that we have is defined. And because of how much automation is going into this, there's a lot of work here that we've basically offloaded. So, and obviously what you can imagine, all these green sort of boxes have their own diagrams. So you can see this can get quite big and quite complicated. You can probably also imagine though, when this is set up, you're going to have a very powerful system in place because you are going to be able to kind of contact a lot higher volume of people and stay in touch with an even higher volume than that. And this can really pretty much revolutionize your business once you get this set up. So of course, your next question probably is, how can you build out sequences like this? And I'm not going to sugarcoat this part of the presentation. It's a process, and it can be difficult because you can imagine there's complexity to all of these sequences and sort of getting them all aligned together, but it certainly is doable. So the first thing you want to do is sketch everything out on paper. Really just figure out, how do you typically engage with your leads? Like, what are the channels they come in? What are sort of their opportunities to contact you or get information from you? And, what currently happens if they choose to sort of not do a step? Can you figure out a way to kind of re-engage them? Basically, kind of go through that process we just sort of did, but for your own business. If you want to kind of create those professional diagrams similar to the ones that I just showed, you can use a site called lucid.app. It actually has a pretty good free plan so that you could actually do what I've just did at no cost, at least for these diagrams. The next thing you want to do is identify the low-hanging fruit. So basically meaning, what are your easiest opportunities for automation? Because those are going to be where you're going to want to start. There's a couple of reasons. One, obviously it's you want to do the easiest stuff first because it's going to, it's going to require the least amount of work. And second of all, I think, it's a big task, and you can get discouraging because it's probably going to could take a couple of months to get this set up. You want to have some quick wins because you're going to see very quickly right off the bat that, even getting some of these simpler automations set up can be quite effective. And so I think it's good to start figuring out where exactly those simple opportunities are. So just as an example, this I think would be a pretty simple automation to set up. This one, maybe here, maybe you don't have a salary guide or a lead magnet. Obviously, you're going to have to do a little bit more planning to figure out how that might work. So moving on to step 3 now. You want to build out your basic sequences in a marketing platform. So there's quite a number of them. We've tested a lot of them to see what is the most effective. I'm currently recommending one called Outplay. Their website is outplayhq.com.
Yeah, we have a partnership with Outplay. So for our clients, you can go to the partners page and click on there and look into the partnership that we have with them.
That's great. So I didn't know that, but I'm glad to hear that, because I find that they're one of the more cost-effective options, but very complete, meaning like they have all the features you would really want in order to build out like complex sequences. So definitely, I think, use something like that. One point I think is important to note here is that one of the challenges that recruiters run into at this point is that you often have your ATS and you have this marketing platform. They don't always talk to each other very well. I know that Outplay does, I believe, have an integration with Crelate, so that if you do use that, that's great, because you can kind of get your, say, data from Crelate into Outplay a lot more easily. But there's a lot of obviously other companies are not using Crelate. So if you are in a situation like that, you may have to come up with some workarounds, or you can keep your marketing data and your applicant and your ATS system separate. It really depends, where you sort of want to compromise or not. If you do want to try to get them integrated, but you don't have, but there is no system that really integrates with your applicant, if there's no marketing platform that integrates with your applicant tracking system, you can try out a tool such as Zapier. Zapier, as that is sort of it's designed just to connect systems that don't really have a way of speaking to each other. And lastly, you may want to consider outsourcing some of these more complex automations, because it's going to take a lot of time, which you may not have, and could get a better return on your investment by using that time to sort of do the work that you do, which is, recruiting, and let somebody else do some of the other work. So
yes, and that's one of the things, to be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to automate, and it's great. I love that things can magically happen for you, but don't let this be a distraction from doing the work.
Yeah.
So finding ways of sketching it out on paper, like that first step, figuring out who you want to identify first, and then this is a great place to outsource. This is where somebody who knows how to do this, who knows the complexities, who can link up whichever marketing tools you want to use with whatever ATS you use. So you're not spending hours and hours trying to figure out the tech stuff. All you're doing is mapping it out and then working with your outsourced partner to make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that even the first step, the mapping phase, may be something you want to work on collaboratively with somebody, simply because, it depends sort of, I think, how deep you are into this world of marketing. But if you are sort of a complete novice, it's hard to sort of imagine what's possible with automation when you don't have like that base knowledge. And I think your imagination is, when it's limited, you kind of stick to what you know, and you may not sort of end up with these sequences that are as robust and, as useful as you might if you sort of spoke to somebody. What we do sometimes with our clients is we have these discovery sessions where we say, okay, like, tell us about what you're doing, like what are your marketing channels? How do you engage through those marketing channels, step by step? And it's a pretty involved process, but at the end of that, we kind of have this clear vision and say, okay, well, here's some opportunity, here's another opportunity, we want to put this together.
Right. And the thing to remember too, automation is amazing. It will never, ever take the place of making those phone calls. This is a way to get your calendar filled, to have those conversations warm up. And so that when you're talking to this person, they're ready for that conversation and they're engaged. But it will never, ever eliminate actually getting on the phone.
That's 100% correct. And I think that you can see in those sequences that, all of the sort of the endpoints, like the big sort of moments in those sequences, they all end with a phone call, because we know that Certainly, sometimes you might get lucky and close a deal through email. It's obviously possible, but it's not likely. And what this does, though, is that, instead of you having a piece of paper or a spreadsheet being like, who do I need to call next? Like, when did I last speak to this person? Or remembering, shoot, like 3 weeks ago, I called this person and
Yes.
they said, call me back. And now I just remembering now. Like, you're going to have a task list that's like, call this person, check it off, or, check them off and then put them in a new sequence based on how that call went. And so that's just going to save you so much time. Like, the recruiters who do this, I know for a fact, have so much more free time on their hands to do their work. And they have a lot more time to, make calls too, right? Like, if you, the more, like, if you're calling sort of people that are not warmed up, obviously you're just gonna have to make more calls to get through those no's, to get through those voicemails. But if you have better, warmed leads, then you can make fewer calls and just get a higher success rate, or even just make more calls to warmer leads and have a higher volume there. So it really is can be quite a useful growing your business. If you
especially if you start to integrate this with outsourcing your research. And then that's where you can bring in your research partner to then help put different people in parts of this funnel for you.
That's a very good point. And I think that actually very nicely, we didn't plan this, but that really nicely segues into my demo. And I'll show you something we've built. Now, this is a standalone automation. It's not integrated, but I'll show you, I think you'll sort of understand the power of it quite quickly. What we do here is we basically go to Indeed and we find jobs that have been posted for 30 days or longer that meet certain criteria that our client has, provided to us. And basically every day we get a new list of these potential jobs that we may want to contact somebody about. But of course, we don't know just from the job title who's the person to contact. And that's when the research partner comes into play. We figure out, okay, who's a potential hiring manager here? Who's an HR person? Is this company really in our target market? Or maybe they're too big or too small. And then we do the research to figure out that exact question. We put their information into this tool, and then it sends them a very personalized email based on the stuff that we know about them. And through this, we've basically combined the human element of, research partner doing that work to figure out how to build our lead list, and, some automation. And you have a pretty powerful way of getting in touch with a lot of people on a semi-personalized basis, so that you're not bugging people with inappropriate or, not helpful outreach. You're actually saying, I know you have this open job. I know this much, I know this little bit of information about you. Would you be interested in talking? And, these clients, they just sort of do this work sort of in the background for them. And they're getting inquiries and they're responding to the people who say, yeah, I'd love to talk, or no, don't bug me again. But, there's ways to sort of deal with all these situations. And it's really been, quite a big, made quite a big improvement to their business.
Yeah, and it's a great way for, a lot of the no's are no, not now. They're
Exactly.
never contact me again. Those are few and far between. So this is a great way to parse out those no, not nows and put them in a nurture sequence.
Exactly.
And a reminder so that you can follow up with them in 60, 90 days.
That's right. And what's interesting about this particular example is, like, if you're somebody who does send out MPC emails, now exactly what job they were hiring for in the past. So you can have a really good sense, for example, of what type of candidate to send them in the future. And that can be sort of worked into an automation sequence. So there's a lot of power here. It is, as you've said, it's something that's good to work with a professional on, but you can really make quite a big difference to your business.
Yeah, and this is a great supplement as well to a content marketing strategy as well. So you can start bringing people in through your funnel and then add them to your content marketing list.
Yep.
You can bring people from your content marketing list and then figure out who should be in this funnel so that you can remind yourself to follow up with those people. So this is almost a holistic approach, but not something necessarily that you want to spend hours and hours on building yourself. It's very complex.
It is. It is. I think you and I both have some marketing background. We obviously understand this. I've spoken to many recruiters over the past, few years, and I understand, like if someone threw me into this right now, it would be take some time to get your head around it. And I think, you usually have better ways of spending that time. I just wanted to sort of end with, just to sort of, this is a bit of an aside, but I think it's an interesting one, which is like some people say, I've had some pushback from people saying to me, like, I really like sending out personal emails, right? I want to make sure that, my industry is small, maybe I don't want to, spam people. I don't want them to get mad at me. And what I say to them is like, there's ways to do this even on an automated level. So you might create sort of a template that looks something like this with all of these sort of variables that you're kind of filling in. This is just one example of an email. But let's say you have a research partner who's like, building out your contact list, and they're just, they're filling in all these different variables for you in the spreadsheet. You could then upload them to a marketing system, send out these pretty personalized emails that actually you did not write. And you can see how, you're going to probably get a pretty good response from this because you've done some of the work and you've automated some of the work. So this is just sort of a little way to, it's such a big topic. It's hard, when you don't really see the details, how this works, it can be hard to understand, but obviously, there is something here, just as a more tangible example to get you to see what, this might look like in practice.
Right. And I think that the biggest key to all of this is automation is amazing. This type of marketing is amazing, but it all starts with a foundation of having a website and having one where you can have people raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested in this. So having a powerful website that is current, that you are consistently updating, whether it's through blog posts or updating new jobs that you're working on, success stories, most placeable candidates, anything like that, so that when these people are looking for you, they actually find you.
That's a very good point.
Yes, this kind of starts with the website. And obviously, you could automate without a really great website, but that's going to help drive all of it together.
It's a very good point to make, because we often have people come to us who say, I want help with email marketing or something like that. And we go to their website and we're like, what's going to happen here is people are they're going to get your email. If they haven't any interest in it, they're going to go to your website, and this is not going to help, right? Like, it's going to let down your marketing efforts, and you're going to spend all this time doing this thing, doing this activity when the core foundation isn't quite there yet. So we always recommend people, like, if you're going to do an online marketing effort and you're going to try and contact a large number of people, you have to have a website to support it. Otherwise, you're just you're sort of letting yourself down in a way, because you're going to have people who are going to, rightly or not, judge you on your website. And they will not continue the discussion, even though you might be a perfect fit for them otherwise. That's just, the nature, I think, of cold or warmish leads. So I think that's a really good point, that you need a website. So, that's kind of that's the end of this presentation, but you can kind of see how you take your leads, you put them in an automation system. There is a possibility for this sort of new business explosion. We've seen it work for people, but, as you said, Tina Marie, there's definitely some work that needs to be put in to kind of get from, where you probably are today to this, complete system.
Thanks, Zach. So anyone who's watching this, who's interested in learning more about what Zach's talking about, if you're looking to outsource this, if you need a website first to get going, or if your website's healthy and it looks great and you're looking to automate, go to therecruiteryou.com/partners. You can find Zach's information. And if you're starting to do this and you need help with the research and all of that, we've got partners there too, so that you can create a complete cohesive plan so that you can have your leads working harder for you without you having to work hard to get them.
Yep, that sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks, Zach.
Thank you very much for having me.